Now, this book essentially makes the argument that you have to give a fuck about something. Therefore, the most important question is, what are you giving a fuck about, and why? Now, that's a pretty cute little concept on the surface. It's essentially a book about values to the self-help industry, which take for granted what your values are, what your definition of success is, and just assume that we all want the same thing. Whereas this book points out a lot of these cultural definitions of success. A lot of these cultural values may not be the right fit for everyone. The real important question of getting ahead in life or improving our lives is not necessarily figuring out how to accomplish every single goal we have. It's more in asking, what sorts of goals should we have in the first place? What sorts of things should we give a fuck about? So, you'll see, as we go through it, that there are a lot of points in the book where it's intentionally contradicting with most typical self-help advice to make people think more critically about some of their assumptions. Some of it I do strongly believe is more correct than the general self-help advice out there. Chapter 1. Don't Try. The book starts off with a story about Charles Bukowski. He was a very famous fiction and poetry writer, but he was a total drunk. He was a lowlife. He was in and out of prison. He had drug problems. I mean, he was just a total mess. It shows that you can actually become conventionally successful in life despite yourself. You can become successful while seemingly doing all of the wrong things and committing all of the biggest errors. Another example is Kobe Bryant had 14,181 missed shots in his entire career, despite having a very successful career and being one of the all-time greats on the other hand. Not forgetting the backwards law from Alan Watts, also known as the law of reversed effort. Alan Watts reminds us that, although we often have to make an effort to learn, grow, and overcome obstacles, other times we must calm down and slow down so that things turn out well. The idea is that the more that you pursue feeling better all the time, the less satisfied you become, as pursuing something only reinforces the fact that you lack it in the first place. The more desperately you want to be rich, the more poor and unworthy you will feel, regardless of how much money you have. The more you desperately want to be happy and loved, the lonelier you will become, regardless of those who surround you. So, the backwards law introduces the central theme of the book, that sometimes negativity can be the path to positivity. Detaching ourselves from the drive to achieve something is particularly difficult and is even confused with mediocrity. However, overexcitement is not usually good, especially in situations that demand reflection and time. Most people's assumption is they just want the positive experiences from life, but it's actually the tolerance and acceptance of the negative experience that leads to the positive experience, accepting the negative as a part of life. Not giving a fuck does not mean being indifferent. It means being comfortable with being different. Therefore, the question is, what do you give a fuck about? If you give a fuck about a few very important things, then the small things cease to bother you so much. So, if you're always worrying about what people think about you, the problem is not what people think about you. The problem is you make their opinions of you worry you so much, yet you cannot control that. Whether you realize it or not, you are always choosing what to give a fuck about. Chapter 2. Happiness is a problem. So, Chapter 2 opens up with the story of the Buddha and focuses on the central Buddhist doctrine of dukkha. The fact that life is suffering no matter what you do, where you go, who you hang out with, what you pursue. There is some portion of suffering associated with it simply because our mind becomes attached to things and attachment leads to suffering. It explains that it's not like we're doomed to suffer, it's that suffering has a certain evolution or usefulness to it. It also talks about a psychology concept called the hedonic treadmill. It is the observed tendency of humans to quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness, despite major positive or negative life changes. According to this theory, as a person makes more money, expectations and desires rise, which results in no permanent gain in happiness. Happiness is great. We all want to be happy. But it's not the only thing in life. Happiness comes from solving problems. So, finding problems that you kind of want to have or kind of enjoy having, and that's how the chapter is wrapped up with a section called Choose Your Struggle. So, if I ask you, what do you want out of your life? And you say something like, I want to be happy and have a great family and a job, your response is so common and expected that it doesn't mean anything. Everybody enjoys what feels good. Everybody wants to live a happy and easy life, have amazing relationships, to look perfect and make lots of money and be popular and well-respected and admired. Everybody wants that. It's easy to want that. A more interesting question, a question that most people never consider is, what pain do I want in my life? What am I willing to struggle for to get what I want? Because that actually seems to be a greater determinant of how our lives turn out. How much sleepless nights are you willing to take on to work on something only you believe in? Are you willing to pay a huge chunk of your salary to stay in a fancy apartment or drive a sports car because it's what you want? Whereas people may see you as the person who has what they do not have many, may not realize how much sacrifices you make to be able to live like that. Now, obviously, this is a very long book, and if I am to cover the whole book in this video, it will be extra long, so I will stop here for now. Make sure to check out my other video for the remaining parts of the book. See you in the next video.